Replaying Doom Eternal made me realize something that I did not notice on my first playthrough. The bosses kind of suck. The Icon of Sin is pretty boring to fight. The Con Maker is basically a glorified pillar. And the best fight in the entire game, the Marauder, becomes just a common enemy that you end up facing multiple times. Even in my favorite FPS games, the bosses always feel so unmemorable and just boring. Or is it just that the FPS genre is not well suited for a good boss fight? So, after going through the old Steam library, I think I found out why FPS boss fights mostly suck. I've got 3 beloved FPS games that I think fail to deliver fun, engaging boss fights, with the third one having one of the worst final bosses I've ever fought in a video game. And then after that, I have 3 games that have some of the best boss fights that I've played in the FPS genre and some of my favorite boss fights of all time. So, to start it off, let's look a little bit more into Doom Eternal and its boss design. So, don't get me wrong, Doom Eternal is a fantastic game with quick, snappy movement and very satisfying gunplay. And the feeling of ripping a demon in half with a chainsaw or even just your bare hands is absolutely amazing. However, the bosses could use a lot of work. The one boss in particular I want to look at, the Icon of Sin, which is the final boss of the game, is sadly pretty boring to fight. And I'm not sure if that's common or if it's just me, but oh well. So to start off, I'm going to look at some of the boss's attacks. It only has a handful of moves that it uses, and as the player you don't have to respect basically any of them, since you never really feel like you're in danger from the boss. Each attack is very easily dodgeable to the point where you can perfectly dodge everything without really thinking about it. Like if the boss is going to punch one side of the map, you have about 2 to 3 business days to get to the other side to avoid it. And if the boss is shooting at you, just walk in any direction and it can't even hurt you. It also does this thing where it runs into the building and just shakes your screen for a little while, and I think that's kind of fun. I don't even know if it does any damage to you, but that's besides the point. And honestly, these attacks are so infrequent to where it will attack you and you have what feels like 2 minutes to run around and do a scavenger hunt for ammo, just to dump all of it back into what is basically what some might call a wall of flesh. But on top of a small, boring attack pool, the boss's large HP pool adds a completely artificial layer of difficulty to the fight. And demons periodically spawn to basically just give you some free ammo and something else to shoot at for a little while. And the fight is only interesting when there are other demons actually spawning. And I think that is one of the main issues I have with the bosses in Doom Eternal. The actual bosses are mechanically very simple with basic attacks that are very easy to dodge. And then they just add a bunch of demons for you to kill and just take focus away from the boss. And I don't know, maybe that's just me, but I don't really like these arena style bosses. I wish that there was just one thing that you're really fighting and they put all of their effort into it. And I know the devs can make a good boss fight. Just look at the Marauder and Gladiator fights. Both of these are actually fun and interesting to fight. Alright, let's talk a little bit about my personal favorite FPS game, Titanfall 2. This game is just mechanical perfection. The amount of movement options that they give you are just insane. From bunny hopping, gravity star boosting, and wall kicks, there are a near infinite amount of ways to get through missions. And an also near infinite amount of ways to die in the most embarrassing way possible. So it breaks my heart to say this, but I kind of hate the bosses in this game. Now the reason is that all of the bosses are fought from within inside your Titan, which feels like the game giving you all of the most interesting ways to play the game just to take that away from you. The gameplay of the Titan feels just a little more clunky than the pilot, and I get it, these are supposed to be these massive war machines, but I don't think that's too interesting. And the Titan's not feeling as interesting as the pilot carries over to how you end up fighting the bosses. You have many different loadouts to choose from for your Titan, but most of them pretty much play the exact same. It all just kind of boils down to use your abilities off cooldown no matter what. Simply pressing Q on your keyboard every 4 seconds dishes out a crazy amount of damage and kills a boss in like 2 minutes. Even on the highest difficulty, this is how you should be playing, and reaching this conclusion is not too far-fetched for a normal player. And the coolest boss in the game, Viper, is seen flying around and taking down your gunships and stuff like that, which is really building him up to be an amazing fight. So then when you do actually end up fighting him, you fight him the same way you do every other Titan. Just spam your abilities in primary fire and then you'll be dead within 2 minutes. And that's the problem I have with this game. All of the boss fights are over so fast and they have no tension since you can just kill them so easily. Even on master difficulty, the hardest difficulty in the game, the bosses pose no threat to the player whatsoever. I mean, you can just run up and make them your punching bag for a little bit and they basically can't even hurt you. And there isn't really any variation in how you fight the bosses, how you interact with them, how they mechanically change from boss to boss. They're all pretty much the same. I mean, basically all of the bosses could be mistaken for a trash mob if they didn't have a name attached to them, which I think is a little sad. I just wish that they added like a pilot 1v1 or just something to really mix it up and change the flow of gameplay. Alright, now it's time for what I think might have one of the worst final bosses I've ever fought, definitely within an FPS game. We're talking about Cyberpunk 2077, and its prime example of bad boss design, the Fullborg Arasaka mercenary, Atom Smasher. This is the final boss of the game who is built up throughout the entire story as being some unstoppable force that you have to overcome.
You look like a cut of fuckable meat, are you?
And the entire game is leading up to this moment. Fighting your way up the tower is a fun and interesting mission, and then you get to the Atom Smasher fight. This is basically a 10-foot tall cyborg who has been terrorizing you the entire game. So then this takes what should be a really rewarding and fun fight and basically just kills it. This is the most bland, uninteresting final boss I could imagine. Atom Smasher is basically just an enemy with a little bit more health and no real boss mechanics. I mean, his arena changes and yet that barely even impacts gameplay at all. All of his attacks are either too weak for you to really care about or just a hit scan move that you can't really dodge, so no matter what you can just heal through anything. And nothing here really tells the player that they are accomplishing something great or completing their mission. Like you finally beat the bad guy, you don't get that feeling. And I don't think that is intentional since Atom Smasher literally is crazy the entire game. All of this just kind of makes the fight feel worthless and very anticlimactic, and left a very sour taste in my mouth for beating the game for the first time. And the sad part is I don't even know how to give any ideas on how to improve this fight or this part of the game in particular, as most of the bosses in this game are pretty much pushovers and just enemies with a little bit extra health. I feel like this is a good example of a game and its systems just not being well suited for making a good boss fight. And it's just a shame because RPGs have some of the most insane boss designs in all of gaming. And I just wish that the FPS genre could come even a little bit closer to that. It would just be absolutely amazing for everyone. But maybe the FPS genre is just too constraining for developers to craft fun, interesting bosses in ways that are fun to fight and also lose to. After going through all of these bosses, I think I found out why all of these fights just feel kind of bad or just okay. First off is the mechanics. In comparison to some of the greatest boss fights of all time, these bosses have incredibly simple to almost no mechanics to influence how you fight or interact with the boss. Another thing is the difficulty of these fights. A boss with just a large health pool does not mean that it is difficult or fun to fight. And a lack of difficulty means that you don't have to learn how to fight the boss or dodge or know any of the boss's attacks. So then when you finally end up defeating the boss, you don't have any actual sense of accomplishment. And I think that this is a real thing that FPS games struggle to make, is a fun, difficult boss. I mean, just look at Dark Souls for instance. All of those bosses are very memorable. Everyone knows their attacks if you've beaten them before. But I struggle to think of many FPS games that come close to that same level. That's enough negativity for now. Let's move over to some actually good boss fights. I have 3 games that have some of my favorite bosses in FPS games. with the final game having some of the best bosses in the entire genre, and I don't even think that it's close. And before we do that, please consider subscribing, as we're almost at 30 subscribers, and that would be just amazing for me. Alright, now let's kick off our good boss fights with Roboquest. This is a fast-paced FPS roguelike, and the bosses are incredibly well designed. One standout that I think is pretty unique is Sir Catercoaster. This is basically a worm boss, but the entire fight takes place on these winding rails, which turns the fight into sort of a cat and mouse chase. And since you guys are going along the same rails, you are always in danger of the boss catching up to you and delivering a ton of damage. The boss also uses mines and turrets to force you to either shoot them, destroy them, or jump off the rail and risk falling into magma. This is overall just a really fun fight and one of the best instances of a fun boss fight that has a good, unique gimmick that it is entirely built around. But another boss in Roboquest that I think is really, really good is the final boss of the game, Iris. The first phase is sort of a corridor fight with the boss being stationary at the other end, sort of like the Icon of Sin, but just better. One thing I love about this boss is its attacks. Each of the boss's attacks sort of work together and can be comboed into one another. Iris has an attack where it basically is a hole-in-the-wall minigame, homing rockets which you have to shoot out of the air, sweeping beams that will stun you, some AoE, and a hacking move which will reverse your controls. And this hacking move can only be avoided if you fully look away from the boss fight, which puts you in a lot of danger. All of these attacks together make you feel like you are juggling a lot of things at once. Everything from looking away from the boss to avoid being hacked, avoiding the hole in the wall and AoE while also taking care of homing missiles. All while also trying to kill the boss as fast as possible since there is no natural way to heal. This is a pretty difficult fight. I have plenty of clips of me dying to this boss, but each time it was actually a very fun fight. Even though it is the same each and every time, it doesn't get old because it is so well designed, and each element of the boss works together just absolutely perfectly. And honestly, I think that all of the bosses in this game are really good, such as Beetle Royale destroying the floor and sending you down a level with magma at the end, or even Judge Ball covering the arena in mines and making you dodge its barrage of bullets being way too difficult. Now before we get to the final game that you have definitely never heard of and could never guess would be on this list, let's do a little bit of a lightning round with two bosses from different games that I really enjoyed. First off, we have the Solar Saint from Medieval. This is a boss that looks pretty much exactly like Ornstein from Dark Souls, which gives it some bonus points in my book. And this boss is pretty simple, but it is a really fun fight. And the boss's entire moveset would honestly fit pretty well into a Soul-like game. He has a move where he flies up into the air and will basically one-shot you if he lands on you, and some attacks where he swings his hammer and spews projectiles from it. But honestly, I really like this fight since it is a good mix-up from everything else you've been fighting up until then. And this really makes it stand out and is a perfect change of pace for the game. Another boss that I really enjoyed was Jacob from the game Dusk. This is one of my favorite types of bosses in basically any game where you are fighting someone the same size as you with basically the same exact moveset. This is a very speedy fight with both you and the boss hopping around the entire arena. But since Jacob has the same weapons as you, it forces you to correctly gauge the distance you should be from him, as if he hits you with a super shotgun or a mortar, he can pretty much kill you instantly. And it's overall just fun to style on him with the sword and hop around the arena. He also ends up getting killed by the Ku Klux Klan, so that also puts it on the list for me. Also from Dusk, I'll just throw in Big John. I mean, just look at this guy, he's a monster. Alright, and for the final game, promise not to be too surprised, but we have Alright, Ultrakill has some of the most unique and deliberate boss designs I've come across in any FPS game. And the first real challenge of the game, being V2, is the perfect jumping off point. Leading up to your duel with V2, nothing really stands in your way. All of the bosses are pretty easy. You might die once or twice to them before you finally defeat them. But then, as you're playing through this level, you begin to hear the most horrifying thing in the world: classical music. And that is how you know this game is getting real. Then, after a little jump scare and a broken window, you begin your fight with V2. Both the first and second fight with V2 are absolutely amazing. This is a fast-paced fight with what is essentially yourself, and it has the same arsenal and weapons that you do. And the pure speed of this fight makes it a huge skill check for new players. The fight forces you to learn how to have better movement and weapon swap correctly, and if you can't do that, then chances are you're probably going to die. The game is also checking to make sure that you know how to use your weapons properly. Because if you know how to ricochet bullets off of your coins or projectile boost, you are going to have a much easier time with V2. And knowing how to parry your own projectiles also helps you parry V2's projectiles right back at it. All in all, the V2 fight serves as an incredibly fun fight for returning players to the game and new players as a skill check. And the skills that you learn from V2 carry over perfectly to the next boss that I want to talk about: Gabriel. I can vividly remember fighting Gabriel for the first time. It easily took me like 45 minutes to beat him. Now yes, I am bad at the game, but he is also the hardest boss you fought up until that point. Gabriel is an incredibly quick boss that teleports around the arena and summons different weapons to absolutely destroy you. But you can always tell what move Gabriel is going to use by the weapon that he is currently holding. And each of his weapons can be parried right back at him to deal pretty massive damage. This fight ends up becoming you dishing out damage and avoiding attacks with the movement and mechanics that you've learned up until this point. Knowing how to projectile boost and ricochet coins just adds a layer of speed and technicality that you don't come across anywhere else. And if you don't know how to dodge properly at this point in the game, Gabriel is going to teach you the hard way. And Gabriel's speed and difficult patterns and total technicality just prepares you for the next step in the game, Minos Prime. Alright, now look, this is one of the coolest FPS bosses I have ever fought. Even the walk up to the arena is not like anything else I've played before in an FPS game. Just getting to the fight, you walk along this long, dark spinal pathway down into a massive mouth with nothing else surrounding it, while just the most horrifying song plays in the background, which perfectly builds all of this tension for this fight. Then you encounter the flesh prison, which you don't know if anything is even inside of it. And this boss is not too difficult, but it is tricky as it is the only boss so far that can actually heal. And once you have finally beaten it, you begin to hear this.
Ah, free at last. Oh, Gabriel, now dawns thy reckoning, and thy gore shall glisten before the temples of man. Creature of steel, my gratitude upon thee for my freedom. But the crimes thy kind have committed against humanity are not forgotten. And thy punishment is death.
And then he has this whole monologue, and you just know you are absolutely in for it. The Minos Prime fight really shines through his moveset. Each of his attacks are perfectly telegraphed through his voice lines. So you know when you hear
Judgment,
he's going to fly at you at about Mach 10 and hit you in the face with an explosive kick to judge if you can react in time. And since Minos Prime is slowly building up your PTSD from hearing these voice lines and dying over and over, you will instinctively just know how to dodge each and every move just off of the voice line. And once you've learned how to dodge all of his attacks, this fight becomes a perfect song and dance with you parrying his moves, managing your stamina, and finding openings to dish out some damage. This fight has pretty much everything I want in an FPS boss. It is fast-paced, the mechanics and attacks are fun and well telegraphed, and the boss isn't too tanky to where you're sitting there for 8 minutes shooting at it. And all of Ultrakill's bosses have these very fun, unique mechanics, and they are all fun to learn and master and even return to once you've beaten them 100 times. I mean, this game doesn't have a crazy amount of content, and people have poured hundreds and thousands of hours into it. And people have made entire video essays on just these bosses alone. So then what is it that makes these bosses so good? Well, they are designed with the player's movement in mind. The game teaches you some basic movement tech that you will need to use to fight these bosses effectively. And since the game teaches you these things, they can keep on increasing the pace of the boss fights as you go along. Also, the difficulty options in the game do not just arbitrarily increase the boss's health pool or damage. They actually increase the frequency of some attacks by giving bosses extra stamina and change up some of the mechanics entirely. This means that no matter what difficulty level you are on, the boss is always right there with you. Another thing is that the boss's attack patterns are actually fun to dodge and fight against. And the bosses, are just fast-paced and fun to fight. It doesn't feel like you're shooting at a wall like the Icon of Sin, or just curb-stomping bosses like in Titanfall 2. Each boss poses a good, unique challenge to the player to overcome. And it does take some effort to take them down for the first time. It's not an easy game. I don't think anyone is just booting up the game for the first time and defeating Minos or V2 on their first try. Well, that's all I really have. Let me know what bosses I missed out on, because I'm sure there are a ton of amazing games I've missed out on. Or if there's any bosses that really stand out in the game that they are in as being exceptionally good. And yes, this video was kind of just an excuse for me to talk about Ultrakill for a little bit, because I am loving this game right now and I've put in like 20 hours this past week. Alright, well, thank you for watching.